I hope you all enjoyed a great lunch, great conversations, and now we have even more good input for you guys. So, I'm really pleased to welcome to the stage Jacob Navok, founder of Genvid, the company that is redefining interaction for live game broadcasts. And remember that you can prepare questions for him using Slido.
Morning. My name is Jacob Navok. I'm CEO at Genvid Technologies, and we're going to be talking today about video games. So although the audience is a little bit dark, I can probably make this out. Show of hands, how many of you play video games? Great. How many of you have kids that play video games? There you go. How many of you watch video games? Interestingly enough, more people today watch video games than actually play them. There are websites, YouTube, Twitch, other places, hundreds of millions of people watch video games around the world. And I myself, I've got a 2-year-old. I watch more games than I play these days. It's a fascinating trend. That trend has culminated in esports, in watching people play video games, and it's also creating new formats of content. That's the point of what we're going to get into today. Now, a little bit of background on myself. I worked for a very large Japanese publisher called Square Enix. They make Final Fantasy, Tomb Raider, Space Invaders, at the CEO's president's office in Tokyo for most of this decade. I also led their cloud gaming, which is a game streaming business. And this company was formulated with my team, who worked with me at Square Enix for many years, thinking about how to redefine video game broadcast, how to think about interaction as media and video games start to merge. And so that's the actual point of the talk today. We're not just going to talk about video games, we're actually going to watch some and interact with them live. So we'll have some fun. Genvid, Latin, gen, birth, vid, to view, birth of a new format of viewing. That's the point of the company. Our mission is to power the future of interactive media. We want to be like a Unity of interactive streaming. Unity, if you don't know, is one of the big game engines actually birthed here in one of the Nordic countries in Denmark. And the founding team here at Genvid is global leaders from Square Enix, Ubisoft, and AMD. We are 50 people today worldwide with offices in New York, Montreal, Los Angeles, Europe, and Tokyo. The team, this is just a portion of it, comes from many different backgrounds, from games, from software development, but all of us are focused on how we think about new formats of viewing, what it means to redefine interaction over live streams. So the key thesis, let's start with esports. Today, hundreds of thousands of people will watch simultaneously a Counter-Strike broadcast or a League of Legends broadcast. They'll fill arenas like Madison Square Garden, watching different teams play a game. They're not even playing themselves, they're just simply observing it. And this has led to an explosion in new formats of revenue in this ecosystem. The video game business today worldwide is about $100 billion. It's bigger than Hollywood. And there is a significant growth in what we call interactive media. See, games is something you play, media is something that you watch, right? And so all of those big YouTubers who are playing games and people watching, like PewDiePie and others, are part of this new format of interactive media. Massive businesses have grown around this. Not just YouTube's own gaming business, but Twitch, which was acquired for $1 billion by Amazon a couple years ago. And in Korea, Africa TV. In China, Douyu and Huya. In Japan, Nikodo and OpenRec. There are massive platforms right now around this new format of interactive media. And so far, the games that have been developed for this have been mostly developed for players. So what we want to think about is what happens when you start to merge games, which are built for people to play, and media, which is built for people to watch. We think that a new kind of category emerges, and this is called interactive streaming. And we provide tools for game developers, broadcasters, media creators to generate new formats of interactivity in real time, synchronized to broadcast in a way that redefines how it is that you're watching. So our mission, while we believe that viewers love live events, love communal experiences, and love when their participation matters. We exist to power that next generation across gaming, sports, and unscripted TV. And we work with Tier 1 events, platforms, and leagues today. In esports, which is the start of it, We've been doing personalized data and cameras, live viewer guides, and the ability to impact and affect, cheer for, and in some cases even drop bombs on players live and in real time. One of the major case studies that we've been working on is the Counter-Strike Majors. Counter-Strike is one of the biggest esports worldwide today. We have been working on the Majors, which is the biggest tournament events for the last year, with Twitch and with most recently StarLadder, with Faceit, with ESL, so all of the big broadcasters. And we generate interactive channels that get sold for people to be able to touch and affect. So let's take a look at one of them live right now. So we are watching a live stream on twitch.tv, so this is one of the big esports streaming platforms. And normally you would just be viewing a game. But this build has our technology enabled, and it actually allows you to touch and affect everything that you're watching live and synchronized to video. Now, when we first started doing this, we realized that people who are watching game streams were not used to interacting with them. They didn't realize they could touch anything. So what we had to do was generate a tutorial, kind of like playing a video game live over the stream that says, hey, you can touch and you can change and you can impact things. So the first time that you load this up, you get a welcome screen. It says, welcome to the command center. Start to learn about the futures. And keep in mind, we're watching a video stream right now. We're not playing a game. We don't have anything installed. We're just on Twitch's website. So you begin by keeping an eye on the action. This mini-map up here in the screen that's showing all the player positions is changeable. If I tap on it, it actually adjusts and reacts to my clicks. Next, if I want to learn more about a player, I can tap on them and I can see their real-time statistics and information all updated at 60 ticks a second at full HD. We're actually analyzing the player's capabilities live and giving that feedback back to the viewers who want it. Next, cheering. I'll show you this in a moment. And then some of the coolest features here, for example, the live mini-map. This is going to show you every player position, where their mouse cursor is facing, what gun they're using, when they're firing a weapon, when they're throwing a smoke grenade. It's going to zoom in on the most interesting aspects of the action, and you can choose to turn it on or off as a viewer at your own kind of discretion. And if you really like a player, you can tap on them, and you can start to doing that cheering functionality that I just mentioned. If you clap for them, you'll notice that he's starting to be on fire. Every other viewer can see the effect that I'm doing in real time across 11 different channels that we're actually aggregating. So you can go and put different head-to-head player cameras, you can go and watch a broadcast while watching a specific player's point of view, and you can turn on this interactive mini-map that allows you to go very, very deep into the broadcast that you're watching. And the more that you cheer for them, the more that that cheer gets aggregated, which gets back into the casters and allows the casters to go and talk about who's being cheered for, how they're being cheered for, and also results in the future specific cheers for a certain player, specific cheers for a certain team, all of this aggregating data that's coming from within the game engine in real time. Not just this, of course, but the ability to customize everything that you're seeing. So you'll notice that the crosshair here is purple right now. Crosshairs are something that CSGO players customize and spend hours kind of manipulating and adjusting. Normally, you would never have an ability to do anything as a viewer, but we can enter into the settings menu and actually change everything that we're watching in real time. It's kind of like having the game installed, but doing so live over a stream. If I want to watch it with red and change the crosshair style, I can go ahead and do so. You'll notice that it's adapted. And when it moves into a sniper rifle, when it moves in and adjusts on a per frame basis, we are actually adapting this, which means that every single viewer can change and customize their kind of perspective however they want to do so. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is a game that already exists, which has this integrated. So the next kind of step with this is what happens when you begin to build product from the ground up with the idea that people who are watching me play are actually going to impact and affect what it is that I'm seeing. So we'll go into that next. We think that this results in a new content format. We call this content format massive interactive events. Up until now, when you've played a video game, you have been the person, the agent that's making change. In other words, when you're firing a weapon, that weapon doesn't fire until you hit the button. When you are crushing candy in Candy Crush, it doesn't crush until you tap it. But in what we're thinking about in massive interactive events, the game is being played and you as a viewer don't need to have the agency to have an impact. You don't need to have skill. You don't need to have learned a lot about how to play in order to do so. You can choose when and where and what moment to interact with this content. If you think about the history of media, you started with television and film. You moved into video games in the 70s. We saw video game broadcast and esports start about a decade and a half ago. And in the future, we're going to have very, very immersive, lifelike AR, VR, etc. And in the meantime, what we think is going to erupt is this massive ability for you to interact with and change content, which doesn't require you to download, install, understand how you're going to play it, etc. And this is what we call massive interactive events. So let's take a look at a couple of them. We're going to start with a very simple game that's doing something incredibly complex. This is a product developed by a single Japanese developer on top of our tech in a month. It's called Space Sweeper. 4 players are playing. They're playing in a very, very harsh world. In Japanese, they call the genre bullet hell, because a lot of things are going to start flying at the people who are playing. Now, as the player is playing, something interesting is happening. He's killing these enemies, and the enemy is angry for having been murdered. So the angry spirits of the enemies are locked to where the player killed them, and the viewer can see them because the viewer can see the ghosts, but the player can't. So as a viewer, I can take these purple spirals, these are the angry spirits, and I can begin to collect them. And the more that I collect, more I can interact with it. We're actually creating a game live on top of the video for the people who are watching it. And inside of that, you can go and you can purchase things, and you can select a specific pixel of the game video that you're watching to begin to help, hurt, or build alongside the people who are playing. So 4 people are playing this, but tens of thousands of people are interacting in real time with what you're seeing. So you'll notice a couple of purple spirals here in the upper right. I'm going to mouse over them. I'm going to collect them. I've got 35 points right now, so I'm going to open up my inventory, select this, and you notice my mouse cursor in the upper right, there's a little yellow box that's trailing it. So I'm going to select a couple of places. And what this is doing is it's sending a signal to some dropships and saying to those dropships, hey, bring these items over here. Here comes the dropships. They're tagged with my name, which is viewer229, and you can see them in different screens that are happening. And I've just sent some help. But you can send spiders, which are very difficult enemies. You can build alongside them like Minecraft and create blocks. In other words, however the viewer wants to engage, to help, to hurt, to destroy, to build, to create, they can go ahead and choose to do so. And this creates new formats of interactions that up until now simply have never existed. This is just the start of it, but there are a couple more kind of fun things that can be done. Next one, this is a studio that downloaded our SDK and built this on top of our tech by former Viacom creative, so one of the big television networks in the United States. Their studio had worked on kids' games for years, and so what they wanted to be able to do was allow kids to create these weird little creatures, they call them chickens, for example, on a mobile device, and throw them live into a stream, like being able to throw them into a wrestling match. Now, the kids themselves are not controlling the creatures are AI, but they're cheering for them, they're feeding them, they're helping them, they're encouraging their parents and their friends to come in and participate in this. What's really cool is that as a kid, you can go ahead and interact with this however you want. You want to send a couple of hamburgers over to a chicken in order to help them. You want to vote for the next one that appears. You want to clap to get them energized and excited. You can go ahead and do so. And these kind of experiences were not possible before this format was being birthed. So I'll run a quick tutorial here for you. We would vote for a creature, clap for them and get them excited, learn about their skills, rally against other viewers in an exciting moment, and also be able to, as you just saw, feed them and get their health up. This is another example of how you can start to create new formats where you don't need to have skill. You can interact very lightly. You can start to touch and change the content that you're watching all in real time. I'll show you one more. This, for me, is kind of the future where all of this is going. It looks like a video game. It's not. A video game has a player. This has no players. This is an interactive television format. It's called Project Eleusis. It's still a prototype. And it's kind of like an interactive version of the TV show Lost. So it's built from within a game engine from the ground up, and there are characters. There are AI in an island. And everything that you see is changeable and interactable. You can watch it from any camera angle you want to see it from. You can learn about every character who's here, so you can see their needs and their goals, their social profile, their bio, their status, what inventory they have. And then you can start to follow them. You can start to study, learn about these characters. The studio that created this called it The Hunger Games meets The Sims. So in The Sims, you're the god, but here there are a million gods, and they're all watching live. So are they going to create heaven or hell on this island? We have no idea. But if you're not watching live and you're not participating and interacting with it, you're never going to find out. So I'm going to enter into this little settings menu here, and we're going to put it in mayhem mode. And we're going to have a little bit of fun with this, because you don't just watch it. You can actually impact it. So we can open up a little drone pad here. And within the drone pad menu, we can select something to send into the island. So I've activated a drone. I'm going to vote for the Judas Goat. Hopefully it wins. Come on, Judas Goat. Come on. Oh, I don't think I won that vote. That's a shame. So I've got mock viewers coming up against me who are competing with me, but hopefully the next vote wins. So what's happened is I've turned on a drone pad, and a drone has just flown in and dropped something off. It dropped off a hatchet. But another drone, hopefully with the goat, is going to come in now. Now the goat, if it does come in, is filled with explosives. There he is. And he's going to blow up. And he's killed all the AI, unfortunately. So not necessarily suggesting that we create a killer goat TV show, but the idea being that, for example, in Lost, you had the Dharma Initiative, that underground lab that appeared. Okay, it appears this week. How do we, as an audience, impact it? How do we change it? How do we affect it? Right? Should we send shovels or hatchets? Should we send goats filled with explosives? I don't really know. But the more in which the audience impacts and affects this, the more rich the experience becomes, the more that this becomes a format of television that up until now hasn't existed. Typically, interactive content involves a narrative and a meta-narrative. So in general, when you're creating content, you create a storyline. You expect people to watch and understand that storyline. But here, the audience are creating their own narrative, which is not to say that every week you're not going to have aliens appearing or a mysterious lab. But what the creators do and what the audience does to subvert that is where this kind of new format really becomes interesting. In that game that I showed you, Space Sweeper, where the players were trying to clear that very difficult planet and you as a viewer were helping them, we don't really know what's going to occur. We don't know how the game is going to unfold, because how the viewers interact and how they choose to make changes is beyond the player or the creator's control. That's why we think that this is a new content category that hasn't existed up until now. We've got many developers who are building on top of our tech stack today. We're also doing things in terms of sports and unscripted reality TV. So imagine American Ninja Warrior, where the viewers are changing the things in real time as people are trying to jump on them. There's a lot more fun stuff that's coming, but this is just a taste of it. I'll conclude today with a brief trailer that shows the kind of possibilities, and then we will move on to questions. So here we go. I think there's audio here. I'm not sure if we're able to hear it. That's what the problem is. This is just showing you the enemy version of Space Sweeper here. So you'll see what happens when they send in tens of thousands of different crazy creatures. It becomes completely chaotic. One of the interesting things we did here with Chicken was we brought in famous streamers, personalities, to be like the wrestling commentator.
The battle is about to begin. Round one, fight! I don't think this is an even match. I think, wait, a stunning upset right here, ladies and gentlemen. Knockout by the Cyborg Dodo. What a match.
Excellent. So you can please find your seat in the sofa, and I'm happy to welcome on the stage the moderator of this fireside chat, Anette Ståle, Vice President of Business and Marketing in Dirtybit, one of Norway's leading game studio, which has produced the famous Fun Run series to more than 120 million users worldwide. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Jacob.
Hi.
A very nice talk.
Thank you.
Please send in questions and we'll have Jacob answer them here. I just wanted to start with, since working in a game studio, we very often consider our players, but I see that there is also the potential of monetizing on the viewers as well. I wanted to ask you, when you founded the company, can you say something about the team composition from the founders?
Sure. So the founding team and I worked together for many, many years at Square Enix, at the publisher I was at. We all come from game development. And I think that that's incredibly important to understand the needs of our customers, because our customers are game developers and game creators. I think if you don't come from having built those products from the beginning, it's very hard for you to understand the needs, but also to understand how this content is going to be built. In other words, we're not just trying to help them fill an existing need. We're trying to help them design a new content format. And I think if you don't come from creation, it's difficult for you to understand that.
Yeah. How would you, when you started to raise funds for the company, how was the pitch, given that many people maybe are not aware of the big potential in the viewers?
It's a good question that I've got to unpack in a couple of different ways. So when we started the company in 2016, Twitch had just been acquired a little bit previous by Amazon. And one of the reasons that they were acquired was because there was a phenomenon called Twitch Plays Pokemon, where 100,000 Twitch viewers were playing Pokemon together. And my company, my team, had been working on cloud gaming for a long time, creating game streams for players. And when I saw Twitch Plays Pokemon, I thought, we have been focused on the idea of game streams for players for so long, perhaps we should be thinking more about people watching and how they should interact instead. And so we came out with that pitch for the initial seed round investment at that point in time, which was 3.5 years ago. And it wasn't well received at that time, which is to say that I think that a lot of the investment was going toward AR and VR for people who are playing games. And I think that cloud gaming at that time, this was prior to Google Stadia being announced and prior to xCloud being announced, had failed twice already, right? It had failed in the mid-2000s with some of the early cable experiments, and it also failed with OnLive and Gaikai and some of the things that were happening around 2010, 11, 12. And so we were coming in, we were saying, we're going to do game streaming, but we're going to do it for viewers. And a lot of people were like, but we happened to latch on with people who understood the industry. Our seed round, which was led by March Capital, and Greg Milken, who's on our board, he had come from game development. He had watched all this happening, and he said to me, I had always wanted to invest into interactivity because I'm so busy these days. I don't play games even though I created them, but I watch a ton of them, and I know that I would want to do these things. And that's where a lot of it started.
Yeah, we are getting great questions here. So we have one question saying that I love the new way of engaging the previously passive audiences in the game. How do you monetize, and how can developers use this to maximize their outcome?
Okay, great question. So there's two components to this. There's how do we monetize as a business, and there's also how do developer monetize. Our monetization scheme is actually linked to developer monetization, so I'll start with developer monetization, then I'll move into our business model. Today, the majority of developer interactions in game streams tend to be treating streaming as marketing, which is to say, this is another way for us to sell copies of a game to players. Our company's thesis is fundamentally different, even fundamentally different from some of the stuff that Twitch does, because we believe that the audience itself can be a new monetization area. And we want developers to sell things against the stream. So what you saw just now in Project Eleusis, in that island title, for example, we want you to be able to purchase for $1 or $2 the exploding goats, right? In Space Sweeper, you would be able to get free anger points, but if you really want to deeply engage, you may need to pay $1 or $2 to send in certain levels of enemies. So we want to create the same kind of microtransactions that have been successful on mobile, but do so for viewers who only have a few moments of their day, but don't mind paying a little bit of money to impact what they're watching and have that make a difference. And that's also how we settled on the business model for the company. So we didn't want to be an upfront licensing business. I don't think that that's a great tech business. So we modeled ourselves after the Unity and Unreal engines, which take a small percentage of revenue based off the success of creation. So we are free to download and develop. And when you generate a broadcast, if you sell against that stream, we take a small portion of that for facilitating it.
Okay. Great. And there are some questions here related to toxic environment in games, and there is a lot of discussion about this in the industry in general. How do you see this? The question is, can anybody interact? Do you have rules for viewing? And also a question about how do you control like bullying, online bullying, and things like that?
Excellent. So I'm going to talk about interaction, and then I'm going to connect that to the toxic environment. When we look at interactions in these products, we think of them in terms of game design balance. So we've got a prototype that we did with Epic Games at the start of the company with Unreal Tournament, where as a viewer you could just kill a player outright. It's kind of like a Roman Colosseum, where if you thumbs down, you don't entertain and you just die. That's a horrible game balance, by the way. Like, it's fun to do, it's an interesting technical challenge, but it's not a way to make everybody have fun. So when Chicken was being worked on with the two creatures fighting, we actually removed the ability to damage the chicken. We only created positive reinforcement on that, and that actually generated way better interactive loops. At the end of the day, we don't dictate what the game developer does or does not want to do, so if they just want to put in kill buttons, they can go ahead and do so. I don't recommend it. But if they don't do the game balance and the game design well, it's just like creating any other format of content. It's just not going to be accepted by the people, by your audience. And that connects to toxicity to me in a very strong way, because you'll notice in all of the interactions, we didn't really use chat. In other words, even Twitch Plays Pokemon, that initial phenomenon was just measuring chat and then using the chat to send inputs into it. I think chat is an old protocol. I think that it is what partially allows that toxicity to happen. And so instead, I'm focused very much on graphical design. You'll notice that everything that was there were buttons, colorful, interactable, but didn't allow you to go and be negative toward another viewer or negative toward another player in a way that was harmful other than an exploding goat. And I think that that's how you need to manage this. The more that we can move away from Wild West comments and text into treating the audience as a participant and allowing them to participate in a way in which the game designer has decided that, is the way in which we'll manage a lot of that problems with horrible audience comments.
So lots of great questions here. One question about when is the right time to ask for investment?
Our first pitches, so when we were doing our seed round, we did 70 pitches. The vast majority of them failed in our first few months because we were mostly a PowerPoint deck, and interactivity, nobody gets it. We tried video, we tried still shot, they didn't understand it. The moment we had our prototype, which we had built about 3-4 months into it, was the moment all of that changed. Because then we could actually send a link to people, let them click, let them touch, show them the differentiation, and that made all the difference. We got all our term sheets post creating that prototype. So the one thing that I regret from that early period is having done the first 50 of those before we had the prototype ready, and that was just because I didn't know. I think that once you do that initial meeting, unless there's been significant progress afterwards, it's very hard to reopen that door. And so these days I don't go back for future rounds up until I've had significant milestones or other things that I can go and raise the investment around, because you don't get that many bites at the apple.
So, question about what is your day-to-day biggest challenge to expand your market share?
I look at the opportunity around customer acquisition, and the customer acquisition for us is game developers, broadcasters, media companies, etc. Because we don't do customer facing, we're not a B2C platform. Around 3 different types of challenges. Challenge number 1, can you hire the right people to do business development? Having led business development for one of the world's largest publishers for most of this decade, I will say that the vast majority of people in business development in the game industry are bad at their jobs. And I knew exactly who I did not want to hire when we did this. I like them all. There were certain personalities that really rubbed me the wrong way. So when we brought on business development teams outside of myself and my co-founder, that was a huge first step for us because I did the business development, right? The people that I trusted on my team. And so the first non-founding business development person that we hired was somebody who I enjoyed working with, who I knew was well respected in the ecosystem, who was friends with everybody that I wanted to get this stuff done with, because in the game industry, it's very much the relationships that you have, right? Do they know you? Do they trust you? And this is incredibly important because when you're going to a game developer and you're saying, hey, try this new tech out, create this new format of content, they have a opportunity cost to use you versus doing something else. They have a real cost of actually assigning engineers and assigning creatives to work on this. And they're taking a huge risk. Is your startup going to exist in the 3 to 4 years it takes to get this product out the door, right? Are you actually going to be the company that's leading this charge or not? When you ask them to do that, it really is significant, and they have to trust and rely on you. So I wanted to bring in people that did that, and I think we were successful. There were 2 other areas that we really focused our efforts on when it came to thinking about customer acquisition and how we position the company. The second one was working with the platforms. So we are Twitch's key partner for interactivity. They've got an entire blog site dedicated to us. Twitch's CEO was on stage at TwitchCon, their conference last year, introducing me and talking about us. We're Unity, which is the game engine's key live streaming partner. We're their verified solution for live streaming. So making sure that the large platforms promote and select us was important. And the third one was just getting brand out there. So you were at Nordic, PGC. We were at all of the conferences, whether it's GDC, whether it's E3, whether it is Pocket Gamer Connect, whether it is Nordic Games. We are always there as a sponsor, as a brand presence, because we want people to know and trust who we are and see us everywhere.
So being visible is important. I guess
Yeah, exactly.
So our time is over. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you, Jacob, for answering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.